start with this. In my previous video, we talked about Tyson Fury's very recent talk of retiring after this upcoming Dillian Whyte fight. In so many words, what Tyson Fury said was, "This is the final fight of my career. I'm retiring after this. $150 million in the bank, healthy, young. I'm going to buy a massive yacht abroad. I'm retiring. I'm out. This is my final fight. I'm done." And, people don't know how to interpret this from Tyson Fury because Tyson Fury says a lot of things, and he often goes back on them.
He does.
Doesn't take him long either.
No, it doesn't take him long to contradict himself.
There is some reason to believe that he might retire. The situation with Usyk being in the Ukraine right now, war-torn Ukraine. We talked about that, but the other angle is that he's trying to sell tickets for this fight by making this the final fight of his career, or simply advertising it as such. Advertising this fight as Tyson Fury's swan song.
Don't you want to see Tyson Fury in action before he retires?
One thing is clear. You can't take Tyson Fury at his word because he often contradicts himself, and it doesn't take him long to do that, often making contradictory statements within days of each other.
You can't take this guy at his word no matter what he says.
On one end, you tell yourself that he might actually be contemplating retirement because the undisputed heavyweight championship, that conversation, it's murky right now. The only other heavyweight champion at this weight for Tyson Fury to fight is currently in a war-torn country that he can't leave.
And he's still got to fight Anthony Joshua.
That's best case scenario. Worst case scenario, this war drags on for months and Usyk spends those months in war-torn Ukraine. He's not available for anybody to fight.
We just don't know.
A situation like that, what Tyson Fury could do if he makes it through the Dillian Whyte fight is see about making a domestic clash with Anthony Joshua. I mean, if that war drags on to where Anthony Joshua can't have his second fight with Alexander Usyk, maybe they can move Anthony Joshua into a fight with Tyson Fury.
Maybe Anthony Joshua fights in a keep busy fight.
If the war drags on and Usyk remains unavailable, maybe Anthony Joshua fights someone else in the in-between time, around May or June. I don't know.
By that time, the outcome of this fight will be decided.
This fight between Tyson Fury and Dillian Whyte is supposed to go down in late April. If for some reason Usyk remains unavailable, you can set something up for Anthony Joshua in either May or June. Then if he makes it through that, you can have him square off against the winner of Tyson Fury versus Dillian Whyte in the fall.
Hopefully by that time there will be some more clarity as to what happens to the other alphabet titles.
What happens with them? Hopefully by that time the crisis might be over. Wishful thinking, I know, since war doesn't exactly come with a sell-by date.
I'm just bouncing ideas around.
Tyson Fury is talking about retiring, and there's a question as to whether or not people should even believe him. Is he serious, or is this just a bid to get people to buy more tickets to what he's billing as his swan song, his departure from the sport of boxing? Your guess is as good as mine.
It's never encouraging to hear a fighter talk about retiring before a big fight.
But this is Tyson Fury we're talking about here. That guy talks just because he's got a mouth.
Could just be trying to sell this fight because Dillian's not helping him.
He's coming at it from another angle because selling the fight on the premise of the bad blood between them, it doesn't work if Dillian Whyte's not there, if he's not actually at these press conferences.
This time next week, Tyson Fury will be telling us it's all bullshit and he's not retiring.
You just never know with that guy. Ultimately, I just want to see the fight between them. That's paramount. That's what matters the most. The actual fight between Tyson Fury and Dillian Whyte. Not the vitriol at the press conferences or the lack thereof. Not any retirement talk. Ultimately, it's all about the fight for me.
You guys train pretty close in San Diego, so what's going to happen if you run into him at the Starbucks tomorrow?
I'm going to punch him.
Because it's coming. I do want to clarify something real quick on the comment that Canelo made, which I think he's an awesome boxer and Eddie's an awesome coach and all that. But as far as him saying that Ryan was supposed to show up at 12 or 2, or that he would show up, then he would leave, that's just misconception, because during that moment, and I spoke with Canelo directly, him and I, and Eddie and I just want to say that during what Ryan was going through, I was trying to help my son to go to the gym. Come on, Ryan, I know this is what you've always wanted. So I tried. And when I would convince him, he would go. But then I noticed, who better than your dad, would know your son, So I knew that he wasn't 100%. So Ryan would just deliberately walk out. See, and that's the misconception, because if somebody knows what you're going through instead of hitting him while he's down, you should say, hey man, we're all family. Let's join together and let me help you. And that's what I wanted to say.
Was Ryan Garcia's father giving in his 2 cents on what has now become the rift between his son, Ryan Garcia, and Team Canelo, Eddie Reynoso, in the Reynoso gym. Ryan Garcia himself said, Canelo doesn't know the facts. The first camp I had with Eddie went great. Then everything went bad. He only showed up 2 weeks before the Fonseca fight, and that's when I first asked my manager to talk to him about finding a new trainer. Virgil Ortiz left because Eddie never showed.
Look, by now we know what Ryan's problem was.
According to Ryan, in so many words, he's saying that Eddie never had time for him, and to that, Canelo Alvarez says the opposite. He says that if you're disciplined, Eddie's always got time for you. Based on what Ryan Garcia's father said,
Right.
It seems to me that perhaps young Ryan Garcia is a bit too high maintenance for Eddie Reynoso.
Which is what I always thought.
Ryan Garcia himself added, the truth also is, that's not even the main reason I left Deciders to part ways. Canelo knows why. I'm just going to keep it to myself and focus on the fight I have.
Canelo ain't got no hair on his tongue when it comes to Ryan.
He's not outright bashing the kid, but in so many words, he's echoing the same sentiments he expressed months ago, that Ryan Garcia, he's not disciplined.
He said the exact same thing 4 months ago. We talked about it here on the channel.
And whatever it is we're seeing now has been building over time, over many months, because this isn't the first time we heard Canelo Alvarez say as much. I'll tell you what I think based on what information is out there, what Ryan Garcia has to say about it,
Ryan's father,
and Canelo Alvarez himself. I think that Ryan Garcia was simply too high maintenance for somebody like Eddie Reynoso, who's a trainer, a star trainer, a good one, but he's not a babysitter. He's not going to coddle you. He's not going to hold your hand. The motivation to be there and do the work, that has to come from you, and I think that at some point, whatever it is that Ryan's dealing with,
it might have become more than Eddie was willing to put up with.
you hear Ryan Garcia's dad say that sometimes Ryan wasn't motivated. He'd show up to the gym that way. Eddie Reynoso sees this, and he sees a guy who's not dedicated, guy who's not focused, and he's not going to coddle him.
He's a trainer, not a babysitter.
Go walking into that gym like you don't want to be there, and that's how Eddie's going to interpret it. Like you don't want to be there, so if you don't want to be there, why should he?
Maybe Eddie Reynoso misinterpreted Ryan's psychological issues, whatever they are.
Maybe Ryan Garcia is simply too high maintenance for Eddie Reynoso, too emo.
In any event, they're not gelling, and that's the important part.
Or they weren't. And young Ryan Garcia, he's not going to get far with turmoil in his own corner. A rift between himself and his trainer, who he feels isn't giving him the necessary attention that he needs. I mean, in any event, they weren't gelling, and that's what we know. That's what's consistent on both sides.
Now he's got Joe Goulson in his corner.
He's fighting Emmanuel to go on April 9th. Beyond that fight, should he make it through it, he may be embarking on a maiden voyage to the super lightweight division. I mean, this is a new chapter in Ryan Garcia's career, an important chapter.
This ain't the kind of job you can do half-hearted.
He's not dedicated, if he's not motivated, sooner or later, it's gonna show up, and it'll show up at an inopportune time for Ryan Garcia. So he's really got to decide.
He's got to man the fuck up.
Got to man up and be his own man. In other news, per a tweet from Michael Benson, I'm sure most of you have heard by now, Canelo Alvarez stated, I'll fight anybody, but they need to fight each other too. They're just waiting for me because they want a good payday. I know that, but they need to fight each other, and I'll fight the winner of all of them.
Canelo's English is really coming along.
And it has instantly provided a lot of clarity to how he feels about these guys and what they're doing and his take on the situation, that all these guys are really doing is just waiting around on him, waiting around for a payday.
Charlo, David Benavidez.
That's what they're doing. What's stopping them from fighting each other? Canelo Alvarez is spoken for at least the next 2 to 3 fights.
He spent last year unifying the entire super middleweight division.
And he already has his schedule ironed out, more or less, for this year. So in that time, what the hell are you guys going to do?
You're going to keep waiting?
Fight more guys like Kyron Davis and Ronald Ellis? Fight more C-class fighters like Juan Montiel? What are you going to do? Canelo Alvarez is set to make his second trip to the light heavyweight division. He's going to move up in weight and take a champion on up there. That's what he's going to do. So what's stopping Charlo from moving up and taking a David Benavidez on?
If he can move up for Bivol, why can't you move up for Benavidez?
Canelo Alvarez added, whatever option for me, the money's there. I just want to make history. Dimitri Bivol offered me a world champion at 175 pounds. It's a hard fight. He's a very good fighter. The money's there no matter what. I don't care about money. I care about my legacy, and it's the truth. regardless of which one of these guys he ends up fighting.
Well, he's the one bringing the money to the table, not you guys.
Well, what are you gonna do? You gonna act like Dimitri Bivol is a safe choice? He's playing it safe by moving up in weight to take on a light heavyweight champion. Then what are you doing sitting pretty at 160 pounds fighting guys like Juan Montiel? What do you call that?
It's refreshing to hear Canelo Alvarez address this himself in his own words.
In English, so that you fucks can understand him. You need to be fighting each other.
That's the reason the paying public isn't on your side.
The paying public knows it, and so does he. So does Canelo Alvarez. What you guys are doing is preserving yourself while you're standing online, single file, expecting him to fight all of you. One at a time, you refuse to fight each other.
You don't have the clout to get away with it.
Your fractured relationship with the paying public.
That's it.
That's why. You're not giving that paying public the kind of fights they want to see, the fights they want to see you in, so they don't get behind you.
Canelo said it himself. He doesn't need these guys to make money. He's going to make money regardless.
Because the money associated with a Canelo Alvarez fight comes from Canelo. Who it doesn't come from is you.
You're not going to pull the wool over anybody's eyes and convince them that Dimitri Bivol is a lighter touch, but Juan Macias Montiel isn't.
You're not. In a span of roughly 12 months and 4 fights, Canelo Alvarez has taken on 3 unbeaten champions, whereas Jermall Charlo has yet to take on 1. And he's been at middleweight for, 4 or 5 years now.
So Gennady Golovkin won't give you the time of day.
Demetrius Andrade's there. He's been there. And you think that people don't see that.
Well, he was there. He's set to move up now.
You think they don't hold it against you when you fight only once the entirety of 2021 when there is an unbeaten middleweight champion that wants to take you on, and you keep putting him on the back burner for a fight you don't even know if you're gonna get.
Think they don't hold that against you when they see that?
You think Canelo doesn't? Why do you think he's telling these guys they need to fight each other? You're expecting one guy, just one guy, to dish out opportunities for guys at 160, guys at 168, and guys at 175 pounds.
Let me tell you something. He already fought the #1 middleweight in the world. That was Gennady Golovkin when they fought.
And afterwards, he unified titles with the man who arguably beat him, at least in some people's eyes, Daniel Jacobs. He took Daniel Jacobs' newly obtained IBF title. Some time passes, he moves up in weight, he becomes undisputed champion in the super middleweight division. And all that time, what the hell have these guys been doing?
This is just the last couple of years, but he's fought champions at 160. He's fought all the champions at 168. Now he's set to fight another at light heavyweight.
What do these guys plan on doing? Waiting around some more? Canelo Alvarez is spoken for at least the next 2 fights, which could soon become 3 since reports indicate they're in the process of negotiating a 3rd fight on Matchroom and DAZN for Canelo Alvarez in December.
What are you going to do, piss away this year like you pissed away last year?
Piss away the time fighting in fights that nobody gives a fuck about. You're so entitled. You're entitled. You deserve a Canelo Alvarez fight.
Kick rocks.
Fuck off. The main reason you're indistinguishable from anyone else to Canelo Alvarez is because these guys have done absolutely nothing to separate themselves from their contemporaries. Now news is broken that Gennady Golovkin versus Ryota Murata middleweight title unification is set for April 9th in Saitama, Japan, on DAZN. If Triple G wins and Canelo Alvarez defeats Dimitri Bivol on May 7th, they'll meet in a trilogy bout for the undisputed super middleweight title on September 17th.
We knew this was coming.
I've always been ambivalent about this fight because it is a good fight that I believe will yield a pleasing aesthetic, and it is a unification match, but it's not the only unification match that Gennady
He
had.
could have fought Demetrius Andrade and unified at any point last year.
I can't stress that enough. The bout will be broadcast in primetime Japan on Saturday, which means a morning telecast in the U.S. Japan is 14 hours ahead of the East Coast, so expect perhaps an 9 a.m. Eastern start time for the main event.
The 2 most inactive champions in today's middleweight division.
Gennady Golovkin is older than Ryota Murata, but Ryota Murata's 2 times as inactive.
And a lot less experienced.
An Olympic gold medalist that I don't think lived up to his potential as a professional boxer. Yeah, he's a champion, but he was elevated to that status.
He didn't beat a champion to be a champion.
But you really can't hold it against him because when you think about it, none of these champions at middleweight beat a champion to be a champion, not even Gennady.
Yeah, They all picked up vacant titles.
Every single one of them, though. Gennady Golovkin is a lot more accomplished than the other three champions at this weight.
You still can't hold it against Ryota Murata that he was elevated to champion when that's how Jamal Charlo got his title.
Ryota Murata ain't got the same kind of pro experience that Gennady Golovkin has. His punches aren't fluid. He's a bit robotic. It's always one or two shots at a time, and they are heavy shots.
He's got power. He's got a good right hand.
He's strong, but he's limited. He's predictable. He's inactive. It's safe to say that Gennady Golovkin gets the edge here. They're both inactive.
Gennady's older than Ryota Murata.
Perhaps more war-torn, more miles on the odometer, but he's also a lot more experienced, more fluid.
I'm pretty sure Gennady's going to be the favorite with the bookies.
Even if Ryota Murata's the one that has home field advantage. I will say, an added X factor is that the Ryota Murata we saw here stateside in the first Rob Brandt fight, that wasn't the same Ryota Murata that took him on in the rematch over there in Japan. Those might as well have been two different fighters, two different guys.
He beat the fuck out of Rob Brandt.
Left you wondering, if he was able to do that, why the hell didn't he do that the first time? Really don't know. I mean, that is an added X factor, that Ryota Murata, he's got home field advantage, and he does appear to be a different fighter in Japan than he is anywhere else in the world.
A two-pronged process for Gennady Golovkin.
Two big paydays in two very different parts of the world. He's going to fight Ryota Murata in Japan, and he'd presumably fight Canelo Alvarez for a third time somewhere here stateside. People, some of them, are poo-pooing all over that trilogy.
Coincidentally, it's the same people that were so high on the Wilder versus Fury trilogy.
It's funny how that works, though. One good turn deserves another.
April 9th is going to be a busy day.
You do realize that Golovkin versus Murata, Ryan Garcia versus Emmanuel Tagoe.
Top Rank's supposed to be holding the card that day, too.
Card that features Michaela Mayer versus Jennifer Hahn, and I believe that the Sebastian Fundora versus Erickson Lubricant.
Lubin.
Jiffy Lube are supposed to be fighting that same day. It's going to be a very busy day, very busy weekend.
Weekend of April 9th it is.
You got to like Golovkin's chances in this fight. To win this fight on foreign soil and move on from that to a Canelo Alvarez showdown at super middleweight for all the marbles, all the belts.
No surprises here. We knew this was coming.
This was always the plan.